And so today, I really want to hear your guys' takeaways, your ahas. We'll do a little bit tomorrow. And then at the end of today, we're going to talk about our implementation strategy moving forward on this material. That being said, guys, I want to know what you took out, what you highlighted out of Chapter 1, Time Management Secrets of Billionaires. What do you guys have?
I'm just glad that we're doing it over 2 days, because I was like, oh, I need to do that again.
And no, Tom, every single chapter is going to be at least a 2-day process because there's a lot of implementation here. So appreciate you leaning in and doing it and being here. What else you guys taking out of the content? Yeah, Celeste.
The idea of simply tracking your time. It sounds like it's so easy, but it's not, because it's easy to get caught up in other things. But really the success is, where are you wasting time?
Yeah. Yeah. And he talked about that process. And then later in the chapter, he also spoke to the fact that you don't have to do that to be successful. A lot of people on time management trainers say, okay, I want you to spend the next 90 days setting an alarm, and every 15 minutes it goes off, write down what you're doing. How many of you, by show of hands, already know that you are not living your calendar to the level you should be? Raise your hands. Yes. Right? So we don't need to go through that exercise. Instead, we can get straight into doing the work of building a model that we can follow. So great job. What else, guys? What else did you pull out of this?
He said that when he's going through the book, he said, I'm going to give you a bunch of different ideas. He said, the most important thing you could do is implementation. Implementation. Just do something. Don't go to a seminar and write out all this information and come back and not do anything. Just pick something and do it.
Yeah, man. That's in that intro, implementing, staying on it, and let's have a little fun. How many people in this room? Because we're going to do what we're doing here is a 30-day seminar. You guys are entering into just like a great training class, 30 days, this material. How many of you, by show of hands, have ever been in a training of any sort before? Raise your hands. Like every hand should be up, right? Mm-hmm. How many of you have been in a training that was really inspiring, amazing, enthusiastic, maybe one Coach Russ led? Raise your hands. Yeah, you better have your hand up, Mark. I know you. And how many of you have been fired up that you're going to take action and do stuff? And then how many of you actually didn't take action and do stuff? Okay?
Wah.
It's the normal human pattern. And so what we're going to do is break this down so we actually have implementation. One of my favorite elements last week was we've had this ongoing Tuesday. So 10 to 11 o'clock today is the accelerators room that we're getting another part of your business cranked up. And I've been in there for 2 months as we've been flapping our gums talking about it. And so last week, because I was in charge, we went straight into implementation and actually did the work. And we're going to do some of that today. And yet I still want to hear what you guys are pulling out of the content first. So what else?
This is Jennifer. On page 14, I like how he says, as you go through these 6 things, don't think about whether you've heard them before. Think about whether you're applying the discipline to implement them. And something about just saying the word discipline, I guess, hit me where it's like, yeah, of course we've heard of these things.
By the way, what kind of discipline are we going to be implementing over the next 30 days? Celeste, what kind?
Touch it once.
Touch it once is one of the steps here. Absolutely.
Self-discipline.
What was that?
Pig-headed.
Pig-headed discipline and determination. The only difference between winners and losers is losers quit and give up. They don't have the determination piece. And you guys are going to stay here and you're going to stick for the next 30 days and start building that muscle. And as we implement, you're going to be building the discipline simultaneously. So Celeste, you talked about step 1, touch it once. Can you give the room a deeper dive on that?
No, I can't.
Come on.
No, I really can't. I haven't been there. I haven't read that part.
Okay, it jumped off the page at you. You haven't gotten there yet. So is part of your discipline going to make sure that before tomorrow, chapter 1 is read? Yes or yes?
I'm not going to be here, but I will be reading it. I will read
Awesome.
it
You don't have to
today.
be here to read it, do you?
No.
All right. So what else do you guys have out of chapter 1 that caught your attention?
Coach
I've
Russ,
got
can I
something,
add
Russ.
something?
Oh, this is great. I see Janalee. I see Ashley. So I'm going to go in that order just because that's how you showed on my screen. I know both of you spoke up, and there's more. What do you got, Janalee?
So one of the things that stuck out to me was this difference between reactive and proactive. That was huge on me because my phone is always by me and the notifications are always ticking off as a real estate agent. And it's my habit of, oh, notification, let me check it. The client needs me. I'm just going to go straight to it. And it ties into that, you know, touch it once, do it. And so many times we're in the middle of something and we stop what we're doing to handle that situation. And then it takes us, I think it went into it, 15 minutes to revisit something. You'll waste 97 hours per year. You know, so much time is wasted going back to redo and go back to something when you're being in that reactive state rather than just sticking and doing with what you were doing and then going back and handling that situation. So that was a big thing for me and a big eye opener.
Good. So let's talk about this proactive versus reactive states a little bit more. Because how many of you have the story? And it's a story that I need to be accessible to my clients all day, every day. And how many of you have the story? In fact, I'll ask, when a client calls, how quickly do they want to be responded to?
Immediately.
Yeah, immediately, right? Actually, that's our story. And same thing with text. And yet, part of this being proactive now is building systems to create expectations for the others. And I saw some of this in here, and I want to give all of you that haven't been in my world a nugget that I do, because I had that story when I was a real estate agent. My gosh, I always have to answer my phone. And if they call, they expect to call back right now. And here's the reality. 80% of the time when they're calling you on something, it's not really that important. And 80% of the time when they call you on something, it's something that they can resolve on their own. You're just the first person they come to. So every single day, I am setting that expectation on voicemail. Hi, you have reached the cell phone voicemail of Coach Russ Collio. It is Tuesday, April 23rd. So excited you called. I'll be returning calls today between 12 and 1 and again after 4, and it'll be my pleasure to return your call. I look forward to your call being the highlight of my day. Now, when are they expecting a return call?
12 to 1 after 4.
Okay? You all have the ability to create these boundaries to protect your time. And you guys get to go through in your mind and make that. The other piece in here I love that he went through is rules about email to protect time. That in his organization, in his company, and with his clients, he has set the expectation anytime an email is responded to, the subject gets changed. It gets updated. Imagine for a moment you did that with every consumer, that in your initial meeting, your initial listing presentation, you talked about how you were going to create, I'm going to find this for you, how you were going to create, got it, a system of communication. This was part of it. Would it make you look more professional? Would it make you look like you play at a higher level? And how about you did that with buyers now, since there's all this topic of how we have to separate ourselves with buyers and create our value proposition, that you have models and systems for communicating that are going to protect their time as well as yours. Can't wait to see you guys implement this. What else do you have from the content?
Hey,
Ashley,
hey.
I saw you were up. Ashley, next.
I just think the touch it once really affects me on a personal level and on a business level. And I was just talking to somebody about this before reading this. For those of you that don't know, I just moved from Chicago to California. And when all my belongings got delivered, I have boxes in every room, and I've noticed that I can't get a single room finished because I go and not only do I touch it once, I touch it 50 times. So I will start something, like I'll start a project of unloading boxes in the living room, then I'll stop and I'll go to the kitchen, then I'll go to my bedroom. And I've been here now for 12 weeks and I have not finished it, and it's driving me crazy. So this touch it once on a personal level is really important to me. I just started doing this yesterday where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to finish it. So that is just something that I really needed to read. And I know better, but sometimes when you need to read it again and you need to hear it again in order to implement. But then even with my own personal work, we were just talking about this because so for you guys that don't know, I worked in corporate membership sales, for a company, and they would always make fun of me saying, we all know where you work even if we weren't with you the day of, because you have notes on this section, you have something at this desk, you have piles of stuff in this desk. And I'd go from pile to pile to pile, and I'd make the piles and I never would finish them. So this is very something that hits really home for me, and I need it both in my professional and my business life. But I always blamed it on my ADD. So I can't blame it on my ADD anymore. I have to do this.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and as we talked before about this, Ashley, when we've had a little bit of coaching,
Mhm.
it's actually these systems that feed your success as ADHD or ADD.
Mhm.
Because anybody with that quote label, and that's all it is that somebody put on you, you have an incredible ability to focus on things you like.
Right.
And so falling in love with these systems and then implement them at a high level makes life so much easier. Don Hobbs, did I hear your voice kick in?
You did. Thanks, Russ. Yeah, I wanted to talk about what you were on before Ashley jumped in. And Ashley, I can so relate. We just moved. Going back to the time frame. So one thing I've always pushed people to do, and I'm relatively good at it, and that is having a time frame after call time, after the most important part of the morning. So 8 to 10, and then 10 o'clock is where I check text messages, emails, and whatever. And the thing that occurred to me, hanging out with big players, is that the minute you go into email, text, in any form, I mean, so many different social media, DMs, all that stuff, doesn't matter what you call it, it's all a text, it's all a message. That in that form, the minute you go to that stuff, you're on somebody else's agenda. You're now in their priority, what they think is important, what they've called about, and it takes mental energy. So don't look. I don't want to know. I'm doing what I do to produce a result. And I thought that reactive versus, purposeful, really, it's in terms that you would also have heard Rush, purposeful, right? Versus entrepreneurial, which is shooting from the hip, doing whatever happens when it happens, versus purposeful timing, I think is a critical part of where I took this book last night.
Well, Don, one piece I want to come, since you brought that in on this, not checking email, social media, etc. I would push all of you, don't do it anytime in the morning. How many of you have checked an email or seen a social media thread in the morning that's pissed you off, hurt you, angered you? It's done something to pee in your Cheerios. And so now you're off all day, right? And so avoid that stuff. Instead, I read this every morning. I listen to stuff that gets me inspired or humorous or upbeat. And I don't get into email or social media until later in the day. Number 2, and this goes into section 4 of this 4-step program of Plan the Day. One of the things he talked about in there was exactly what Don's talking about, of having this block of time to do the small ticket activities. Now we're going to look at social media. Now we're going to check voicemail. Now we're going to do those pieces. For my world, I call that flex time. As we talk more on calendaring and see what I'm doing, and by the way, based on this, I've now added 2 half-hour blocks of flex time to my day because the material said to do that. So what else
Rusty,
you guys pulling? Yeah, go, Don.
Yeah, you and I should probably compare on that, because I'd love to show you what I'm doing and know what you're doing, because it would be great to give these guys a real handle on what that could look like as a result of being in this book.
Well, since we're talking about that, Don, when might be a good time to actually share these things and have people work on these things? What if we took, hypothetically, Tuesday through Thursday, and our 2 to 3 or our 2 to 2:30 time that is conversation and role play, we instead converted that right now to implementation? Because that way you guys would be here in the Renegade room implementing, and we would help you with that and share what we do and coach on it every single day for the month of now through the end of May. And then you guys could stick around and actually do some follow-up and some conversation time, because I know you're not doing enough of that. And then in this material, he talked about doing this 6-step process every day to plan the next day. What would it be like if from 4:45 to 5 o'clock Central, somebody already updated their calendar and was going to be doing it here in the Renegade room, so we could all just show up and do the work of planning the next day? What would you guys think of adding those to our life and building a little more structure in our calendar to structure our calendar?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Sounds good. I saw 1 thumbs up.
Yep.
Any other feedback or stuff from the content? Let's hear from you guys.
Yes.
I'll add,
Mark.
I'll add some.
Go, Mark. What do you got?
2 things. Number 1 is when he talked about when he found out when he was meeting with I can't remember the guy's name that worked for Buffett. He said that he had to call his assistant and block off the calendar. He couldn't even get in until he did all that. So he said, now how can I do that? One of the things I like what he is, he went back and evaluated his company and figured out how many meetings he needed to have based on what was important. And he said, instead of having at the moment meetings, I forget what he called it. He said, I'm going to schedule meetings for each and every one of them for marketing. One was for sales. And I, just in my own world, I don't think they need to be an hour. They could probably be 15 to 20 minutes with that specific department or person, if you will, so that you can free up that time. The thing that he did is he went back and he sent an email to everybody saying, hey, no more of this. From now on, we're going to meet at these structured times. And I have a couple of them, but I need to go back and reevaluate my company, my business, and find out where do I have to have those meetings, let everybody know. That's when we're going to talk about those things, not necessarily in between. And I thought that was amazing, because he said he was working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then in his calendar, he only had 9 hours worth of work that week. So I'm like,
Right.
wow, that was pretty impressive. Now, the other thing I want to add to what you just said, Russ, there's nothing, in my opinion, nothing more powerful than accountability. And I would say this, and it's probably not going to be very popular on this, but if everybody gave you $50 a month, and if they didn't do their work, and they had to give you $200 for the work that they didn't do, I guarantee you they would do a whole lot of work before they got on the call with you. And that's, I think, the number one reason why all of us should have a coach, and we should spend our money on that coach, because a whole lot of work gets done right before your call with that coach.
Absolutely. Accountability. By the way, I know, Mark, you're committed to building, which is why you're showing up every single day, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, because you love that accountability on building, don't you?
I absolutely love it.
I know you do, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, Coach. Hey, Russ.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course, Amy.
Thank you. So with regards to building, I know you are, build. Would love to hear what time constraints you have put into your system, like around creating space and boundaries.
That sounds like an implementation conversation for 2:00 Central today.
2 to 2:30.
And I promise you we'll cover and we'll talk about that. And I bet Don will bring his calendar and we'll start implementing all of this over the next 2 days and then continue to grow from that.
I see
So let's see
your
what
message.
else from the content, guys.
Coach, I'll
What
have.
else here caught your attention? Go,
I'll have-
Judy. I see Judy's hand and then I hear a male voice. Judy, what do you got?
So the 6 most important things list. I really liked, I assume a lot of you know about that concept. And I've been doing that for years, but I like how he went into how to implement that. So I've for years had a 6 list, but I didn't put it in time slots for the day. So I would get things done on the list, but it wasn't planned out that way on the calendar. So that I think will be very helpful in this business that's new to me and more structured than what I've done previously for a while. And then I know a lot of people like to keep lists, and it is important for it to only be 6 things, because if you have 25, you're just overwhelmed and you toss your list, right? So I don't know if everyone's read the chapter yet, but the point is that you get the 6 most important things. It's okay to have a big, long 50 item list, a running list, but you take the 6 most important off of that and then implement those each day. So
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
happy to
this
see that
topic-
come up.
Yeah, this topic of to-do list, and we've talked about it before. Last year, Don and I have done a lot on it because a to-do list is not a success list. And a
Correct.
lot of people have a to-do list and then they go through and they go, I'm going to take the laundry to the cleaners so I get to check it off and feel good that I accomplished something. You get that little endorphin rush by checking your list off, and you pick the stuff that's easy and simple, that is tension relieving, joy giving, rather than goal achieving. And so this section of prioritizes, okay, let's look and let's pick the top 6 max as what we're going to get done. Now, for many of us, that top 6, or at least many of them, will be identical every single day. Let's do a great one. Should we be doing lead generation for our business? Looking at what he wrote down there. Minimum 2.5 hours a day based on his content of finding new business. Okay. So that's probably always going to be top of the list every day to build your business and generate revenue. Personal development, personal growth, being in this room every day. Probably going to be on that list every single day. And yet there's going to be other things maybe that have to get done that you get to reflect on today to plan tomorrow. And if you just do that every day, have a planning session, let's just say from 4:45 to 5 o'clock Central, and you did that with all your other friends, your following day would be more successful. Now, one other thing I want to put in here, building the calendar and doing this piece is the easy part. Sticking to it is where it's going to get a little tougher, and we got to, again, help each other do that at a high level. What else you guys have? Go.
Just to tie one more thing onto that.
Yep.
Even if you're making that list at 5 o'clock, if you look at it right before you go to sleep and just go over your list for the next day, it gets your unconscious brain working on that for the next day.
Yes, it does. That is an excellent point, Judy. Thank you.
Judy,
I heard
Coach,
some other folks want to speak up. Don,
Yeah, Coach, I don't know if you can hear me.
Don, then Caesar. Yes, sir.
No, I was going to, I love how Judy was almost like, I don't know if you've read the book yet, but almost like, I don't want to give a spoiler. You can give all the spoilers you want. I thought it was funny that you did that. Like, just bring it.
Awesome. All right, Caesar, my friend, what do you got, buddy?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to Mark's comment in regards to, I think Thursday that email went out. Friday was like a clear day, but by Monday, I think some of the people started kind of coming back around. And so that's where I don't know if that's the same chapter or the next chapter, where it says that you got to continue to train. And it reminds me of our prior training, how we met, how we, those weeks prior, week by week, helped us just instead of doing just 1, 2, 3 day course and then being gone. And then secondly, I wanted to add to not only the list, but he also put a time frame of how much that task was going to take, either 30 minutes, 90 minutes, an hour, whatever the case may be. And just to bring it to an example, yesterday, one of those, I'm like, okay, I'm going to set a timer exactly for this little item. I was going to set like 15, 20 minutes, and I actually got it done in 5 because I knew there was like a time limit. So all of a sudden, like you're like want to do it quicker and get it done before that time hits. So that was just like a nice little nugget that I wanted to add to all the tasks that we were talking about.
All work expands to fill the time allowed.
I just wrote that. I just wrote that, Russ.
It's kind of crazy that we've so many of these things that we've heard over and over again from our prior trainings, and then you reading in the books and you're like, oh my gosh, here it is again. It's like it's kind of, you know, it's full circle.
By the way, as he talked about too, all meetings expand to fill the time allowed. We have a 15-minute meeting from 8 to 8:15, and magically we get through everybody's accountability in that window of time. And I guarantee if we made it 30 minutes, it would take 30 minutes. And so really tighten these up. Mr. Klein, I see that finger moving. What do you got, brother?
Hey, I just want to just speak to what was just said about how it is we've heard these things before. Life is such, and I said this to someone, we will get taught the same lesson again and again and again until we learn it. So we have a choice. Do we want to get past it, or do we want to learn again and again? So when he said that, hey, we've heard this before. This has been in trainings before. Yeah, it has. We just haven't learned it. So it is what it is, you know? I thought that was interesting.
For everybody today, you get the opportunity to reread this again for tomorrow. We're going to be covering more of it tomorrow and talking deeper about it.